So when we're talking a blast from the past, how far in the past do you want to go? Today we have 1965. This fragrance is called British Sterling Cologne. It used to be owned by MEM Perfumes. Now it's owned by Dana. I'm looking forward to giving you my thoughts on this classic oak moss, nutmeg, spicy leather fragrance. So make sure to stay tuned. Now, before I begin today's episode and I give you my thoughts on this cheapy but goodie, it's a fragrance from 1965. I purchased it many years ago. I think I paid 10 or 15 bucks for it. You can buy the big 5.7 ounce bottle for like $20. It's a steal at this point. I do want to start things off first by saying that if you are a fan of fragrance related content, please do consider supporting the channel by subscribing to it. Hit the bell and give this video a thumbs up, as it would greatly assist with the YouTube algorithm, and I upload videos on a daily basis. Now, here we have a fragrance that came out back in 1965, so it's been around for a very long time. You look at the note breakdown, you have citruses, you have spices, you have cedarwood, nutmeg, there's cinnamon, there is oak moss, there's a bit of amber in here as well. So it's this very dry, green, earthy, spicy sort of a fragrance with that very bright, zesty, and uplifting introduction. And of course, when you think about fragrances from decades past, there are inevitably certain ingredients that are going to come to mind. You're going to think of oak moss, you're going to think of fir balsam, you might think of patchouli, you might think of other green ingredients that are typically used in chypre or aromatic fougere fragrances. Nevertheless, I'm going to be giving you my thoughts on the smell of British Sterling in just a moment. Let's start things off with a quick look at the presentation. So right in the opening of this fragrance, you are going to get this bright, zesty, citrusy introduction. Now, the citrus is very short-lived and it's also quite nondescript. So you are going to get a little bit of like a bergamot presence. You're not going to get anything hyper-realistic or anything like that. You're not going to smell it and say, wow, this smells like a freshly cut lemon or something like that, or a lime wedge or a grapefruit rind or something like that. No. You're going to get bergamot, you're going to get a little bit of zest, and it's going to dissipate in 8 minutes, right? So, but it is a really nice introduction, and it kind of sets the way and sets the path for all of the other longer lasting ingredients that are soon to follow. So of course you have oak moss in the dry down, and I just got to mention the oak moss right away because it really is the star of the show. You think of fragrances like Polo Green, there's so many classic men's fragrances that have utilized the note of oak moss. Of course, there's also the original Lacoste for men. There's also Versace L'Homme, which was in the transparent bottle. And there's also Paco Rabanne Pour Homme. All of those are really wonderful oak moss based fragrances. If you've had the opportunity to try any of them, you have a pretty solid idea of what to expect from this fragrance. The thing that sets this apart, however, is it's rather spicy. So it has the nutmeg, the cinnamon, it has some other spices in here as well. It says amber in the dry down. It doesn't really smell rich or vanillic or balsamic or resinous or anything like that. So I'm not really getting much of an amber from this one, but I am getting the oak moss, the citrus, and the spices. Now here's the thing, if I were around in 1965 and I had the opportunity to sample and perhaps even wear this fragrance in its heyday, I probably would have been brought to my attention that it was a strong fragrance. It performed very well. The oak moss was probably a bit more natural. You know, nowadays I feel like a lot of these brands have been neutered and adulterated, and they're just shadows of their former selves. And I'm not denying that that's the case with British Sterling. I think a lot has probably happened over the past several decades, and you know, how else can they afford to sell a bottle like this for 10 or 15 bucks, right? It doesn't happen too often. I mean, yes, the presentation is very cheap. The plastic insert, I mean, it barely holds it into place, but I do find that this one is a sort of glimpse or a keyhole that you can look through into the past of what fragrances used to be like. And I always appreciate when I come across fragrances like that, because it gives me a little bit of insight into decades that I wasn't even born into, right? So I always love exploring what has paved the way for modern fragrances, that has allowed fragrances being released today to become so popular. And we do have to pay tribute and homage to some of these predecessors because they have, like I said, paved the way for a lot of the newcomers out there. But British Sterling, drop your comments down below. Have you tried this fragrance? Do you have any experience with it? Did you wear this one back in the day? You know, I always love expanding my collection, and I'll buy cheapies, I'll buy modern fragrances that were released just yesterday, I'll buy fragrances released 50, 60 years ago. It doesn't really matter to me, right? I just want to get my nose on as many fragrances as possible to expand my palette, if you will. So drop your comments below. Let me know, have you tried this fragrance before, or any of the other His Imperial Majesty fragrances that the brand has to offer? Let's go ahead and finish things off with my overall assessment. Now, first up, in terms of the uniqueness and the overall smell, well, I compared it to the original Lacoste for Men, Versace L'Homme, Paco Rabanne pour Homme. It also gets compared to a Cacharel fragrance, but this one came out way before any of them, and oak moss has been in utilization for a very, very long time. I mean, even if you go back to the 20s, Guerlain was using it. And anyway, oak moss has been around for a very long time, but I do find this to be unique for its time. In terms of the longevity, this one lasts on my skin like 3 or 4 hours. It's quite sad, actually. Projection was okay for the first 15 to 30 minutes of application. It radiated within an elbow's length. It really became a skin scent right around hour 3. It's actually quite disappointing, but this is the type of fragrance, it's cheap enough. You want to reapply every 2 hours or something like that just to get that opening. You can afford to do that with this fragrance. You're not going to break the bank. In terms of the versatility, it would probably appeal to somebody who's a little bit older, if I'm being honest with you. It is masculine leaning. Probably great for the hotter weather just because of the performance issues. And I think this one can be worn casually or formally, if I'm being honest with you. And in terms of the presentation, like really, really cheap. It doesn't have a crimped on atomizer. The distribution is actually quite good. It's not pressurized. The stem isn't invisible. And the plastic insert on this box here is very cheaply done. You don't even have any, information on the back. You just have a graphic and it says actual size. So you know what you're, signing yourself up for. But my final verdict on this fragrance is I love having it in my collection for the simple fact that I can smell it and I can be kind of reminded of what fragrances were like decades ago. Of course, that's taking into consideration the reformulations and, it being a sort of castrated version of its former self. But that's neither here nor there. I am just happy to have it in my collection. Look, thank you so much for watching today. I really hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you took something of value from today's episode. Once again, if you have any experience with British Sterling Cologne, drop your comments down below. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe, hit the bell, give it a thumbs up. Love you guys. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye.